Hey everyone, welcome to the Frontrunner SDK workshop, part of the Injective Global Virtual Hackathon. I'm excited today to present the newly launched Frontrunner Python SDK, which will kind of help all of you build on top of both Frontrunner and Injective. My name is Brian. I'm the co-founder and CTO at Frontrunner. If you're wondering what Frontrunner is, we are the first zero gas fee decentralized sports prediction market built on blockchain where you get the best odds with no house edge. Frontrunner is built for mass adoption, so everyone from the casual sports fan to the experienced sports bettor can bet on Frontrunner very easily. In terms of how Frontrunner uses Injective, our prediction markets are powered by Injective's binary options contract markets. So just like Injective has spot markets and futures expiry markets, the binary options markets resolve at a given price depending on the outcome. For us, it might depend on the outcome of a game. Depending on who wins the game, your shares will resolve at $1 or $0. And we'll kind of get more into the details on that when I show off the product here. Now, the Frontrunner Python SDK is a way to programmatically interact with both data from Frontrunner's API as well as the Injective API and submitting transactions. And this kind of enables use cases like market making, analytics, and many others that you might find in the bounty program listed on the Injective Hackathon Notion Wiki. So we're going to kick off with a product demo to kind of showcase some of the concepts that are important to understand if you're going to be coding using the Frontrunner SDK. So we're going to get into buying and selling, what it is to buy long or sell long, buy short or sell short, as well as the different market types on Frontrunner. So here we have the web app. Definitely recommend downloading the mobile app as well for a mobile experience version of this, which looks a bit different, but this will be good to kind of illustrate the different concepts that I mentioned. So we have event markets and futures markets. The futures markets are non-binary markets because there are more than two potential outcomes in these propositions. And we're going to focus more on event markets here and binary markets, but that's kind of the difference there. The binary markets, only two outcomes. The futures and game or events that could have a draw, for example, are non-binary. So let's look at the NBA markets. So if I jump into this market here, the Heat versus the Knicks, we see that we have one side of the order book filled at the moment. We have bids going from 27 cents up to 30 cents. And with prices resolving at 0 or 1, depending on the outcome, each cent within 1 cent to 99 cents represents the implied probability of that outcome happening. So in this market, we see that the Heat has a probability of 30% to win the game here. Now, what we want to talk about here a bit is long versus short. So the long entity is always on the left side here of the display name. So the Miami Heat would be the long entity, which we'll see on the programmatic side, and the New York Knicks would be the short entity. So if I'm buying long, that means that my shares will pay out $1 if the Heat win, and they'll pay out 0 if the Knicks win. And one thing to remember is you can buy and sell in these markets. So as long as there's liquidity, you'll be able to sell your shares, potentially at a profit, maybe at a loss, but before the end of the game, before the market actually resolves at 0 or 1, you can sell your shares here, whether it's long or short again. So here it's the Lakers versus the Warriors, and we see kind of a full order book here. The highest bid is at 38 cents, the lowest ask is at 40 cents. So the kind of market price implied here is 39 cents, an implied probability of 39%. So we've kind of gone through long and short a bit. I want to jump into the code so we understand how that applies to using the SDK and actually submitting orders and doing something like market making. So let's open up the docs and dive in. So we have a quick demo repo, which will be available after this live stream. But the simple kind of start is you pip install the SDK. You'll need a partner API token, which you can get from emailing us. One important note is you need to install the Injective SDK prerequisites, which are kind of OS specific here, in order to use our SDK, because our SDK relies on the Injective Python SDK. So once your pip installed, it's pretty simple. You can create a wallet. This will actually fund a wallet from the Injective testnet faucet. So everything we're doing today is on testnet. Frontrunner will be launching on mainnet later this summer. So if we look at creating a wallet, you would get your 24-word mnemonic logged out. You want to save this, and then you can configure the SDK to use that wallet using an environment variable, which we'll see as well. So I'm just going to open up this kind of fleshed out example that goes along with the quick start. We're not going to create a wallet here right now because I've already created one within the last 24 hours. And Injective rate limits the testnet faucet, so you can't just keep requesting funds. So I already have a wallet that is configured with the environment variable. So let's take a quick look at that. So I have already stored my mnemonic, and in my ZSHRC have set this as an environment variable. So now when I use the SDK, it's set up to pull funds, to submit orders and transactions using that wallet. So we've already created the wallet. Now, the very first operation that we want to understand about the SDK is how to find markets. So let's take a look at this. The find markets operation is a convenient, search function for Frontrunner markets. And the Frontrunner markets that we find have the information you need to identify the game that, or kind of event or championship or league that might be related to this market, and also to get the Injective market ID to submit orders. So here we're finding markets, we're finding basketball game winner markets that are active. And if you remember in the UI, we showed a few of those that are part of the playoffs, so we expect to see those and print them out. Again, it's important to understand the long entity and the short entity. So when we're talking about sport entities here, generally they're going to be teams for the current version of the app, for the current markets we have, but they could be players in the future as well for a player prop, for example. Which player will score the most touchdowns in a game, for example. But in most cases at the moment, we have entities that are sports teams. And we have game head-to-head markets or moneyline markets, who will win. So we're just printing some of this information and printing the event start time as well. So let's run this. And this search function makes several API requests, so it takes a couple seconds. There are other ones that are part of the SDK that are kind of faster and under the hood are directly hitting the API, the single API endpoints, rather than collecting and aggregating like this function does. So here are the markets that we have. As we saw before, the Heat versus the Knicks. Here's the Frontrunner market ID. Let me just scroll up here. The Frontrunner market ID, the Injective market ID, and here's the order book. So we see the orders that we saw in the UI as well. This is the number of shares, this is the price. Note that we're scaling the price by, let me just check this out here. We're scaling the price by the USDC scale factor. So Injective USDC on Injective has 6 decimal places, so we divide by that to get kind of the display version of USDC. And again, so here we just have another market, another order book. This one had sell orders, whereas the other one doesn't. So we call this kind of a full order book here. And you can see the bid-ask spread as well. So these are the markets. This is kind of the first key piece to discovering what is available for trading. We'll get into actual trading programmatically and submitting and canceling orders soon as well. So that's the finding markets side. Now we have these specific functions, just convenience functions here in this demo for printing the order book. So we can kind of see how it changes and see how your orders change as you submit orders. So let's take a look at that. So we're going to be operating in one market, not these markets, but one hard-coded market here that we can use the faucet funds for, USDT rather than USDC. So let's submit some orders, and then we'll take a look at the order book afterwards as well. So we see the order book before. We have submitted these orders. So before we take a look at the transaction, but we see that it was successful. Let's take a look at what this function is doing. So it's running the create orders operation, which takes in a list of orders. And here is where we get into specifying the order type. So we're buying long, which means that we are betting in favor of the long entity or long outcome being the correct outcome. And we're buying, in this hard-coded market ID, 10 shares at 2 cents and 10 shares at 3 cents. We just kind of set this highest buy parameter to be 1 cent, just for illustration here. So let's take a look at our orders now that we have submitted a few. And the order book as well. So booked means resting limit order. So we expect to see a few of these. So the order book before was 15 and 30 at 3 cents and 2. Now we see that it's increased, which makes sense based on the orders that we submitted. And here are our orders. This is the order hash, and it says again the number of shares and the price. So let's just take a quick look at this. Here we're getting our orders. We'll look at these in the docs as well, but in terms of this one right here, some of the queries on the Injective side will have a mine parameter, which just basically says, I only want to see my orders. So it'll use the wallet that is configured and filter by that account. So we're only getting our orders in this market. There are other resting limit orders. We see, for example, the sells here. So if we did not include mine equals true, then we would get all of the orders in this market. So let's take a look at canceling these orders. So canceling is an important part of market making, of course. As part of the risk management strategy, you're going to need to cancel orders that are outdated as your algorithm updates probabilities, or if you need to mitigate risk by reducing your exposure in a market, then canceling is important. So as a convenience, we have a cancel all orders function, which we'll demonstrate here. So let's take a look real quick at this function. So it's pretty simple. And sorry, I realized I want to take a look at the transaction too. So going back for a second, the transaction on the testnet explorer just shows that we successfully submitted these 2 orders. So we do bulk operations in the SDK because it's more efficient than one order after another. So we submitted these orders together. And you see these prices are not in their display format. So this is 2 cents, this is 3 cents, but this is all the information from submitting the order. And we can see our account here with our list of transactions. So here's our transaction there. So going back here, let's cancel our orders and check out what the order book looks like afterwards. So canceling all of our orders, under the hood, it retrieves our open orders, and then it submits any markets to cancel all of our orders in each market where we have open orders. So we can dive into that implementation later, but that's kind of a bit under the hood. When we cancel here, let's take a look. So we have the order book before. We've canceled our orders. And let's take a look at the order book and our orders post-cancel. So we see we have no booked orders, and the amounts at these prices have gone back down since our orders have been canceled. So the other thing I want to show is printing our portfolio. So let's take a look at that. The portfolio is kind of a pass-through to Injective's API, so we're going to see the same essentially response that we get from Injective. Looking at this under the hood, it's very simple. It's getting the configured wallets portfolio. So here we see all of our different coins and their amounts. These are unscaled, so we'll be adding in functionality to scale them and show the display names rather than the kind of under the hood names here. But this is basically what the Testnet Explorer shows you in your balances. And you can see this change as we submit orders as well. So we submit orders. Let's just do the same thing. We'll submit a few more. And if we take a look at our portfolio afterwards, we see that this value has changed. This is our USDT balance. We submitted orders in a USDT market. So next, what I want to show is how you might proactively get updates and stream updates related to your activity in a market. This is kind of a critical piece for market making. You don't want to have to poll every second, every 2 seconds, or 5 seconds. Although that can be important as well to, in case your streams aren't active at any point. But streaming is kind of a critical piece of any sort of market making bot. So we have a separate stream here, and we'll see how that works, running 2 Python processes at once. So streaming trades are matched orders. So basically, if as an example, if I buy long at 40 cents and someone else buys short at 60 cents, those orders will match, and we will each end up with shares of our respective outcomes. So that's kind of how these prediction markets or binary options markets work under the hood. You can match when you're on opposite sides of the outcome. So we saw in the order book before that there were some cells at 40 cents. So we're going to match with those cells there. So if we look at submit orders, we're going to move over to this kind of matching transaction here. We're just going to purchase 2 shares at the lowest ask. Real quick, showing the order book again. Here are the cells at 40 cents. we're going to buy those shares basically. So let's submit the order. And we'll start the stream over here as well. Sorry, over here. So here we're going to pick up any new trades that are a part of this market. And here we're going to submit our orders. And there it is. So we have our successful transaction, and we have this kind of immediate update, which is the trade. Now I want to go take a look at the docs to kind of show what the full data structures look like. But this is kind of the basic setup to operate in a market, to submit trades in a market, while simultaneously streaming updates. And there's some other streaming endpoints as well, streaming operations that we support. So let's take a look at that. So we've already been through, find markets. You can send in different sports, event types, and so on. We'll get into the other Frontrunner operations as well after this. But let's take a look at, what we've been doing in this demo so far. So we can create orders. We can buy long. We can sell long. We can reduce our positions by selling, and we can buy short or sell short. And reminder that the entity on the left side here is the long entity, and on the right side is the short entity in this binary market. So these are our 4 order types, and these are kind of what you would be submitting in Frontrunner markets if you were to be building a market maker bot, for example. Now, the other operations that we saw, you had get order books. So you're passing in your market ID. We kind of link the Injective docs here because we're passing through the Injective response. So similar to the Injective examples here, this is what you'll get from this operation. We also saw get orders. There are a bunch of different possible filters here. We're not going to demo all of them today. We saw positions as well, which again, you can see the full response here in Injective's docs. You might have seen this in one of the previous workshops on the Injective side. And what's important to note is you can also get your trades, and you can stream other, data types on the Injective side as well. So if you want to stream your orders, which would kind of show you not just your matched orders, but it would show you your canceled orders, your booked orders, anything that your account submits, then that's where you go here. You could also omit the mine parameter, which means you would get all orders in a given market. So it's kind of flexible in terms of what the use case is. You're able to stream more activity in a market or less. Similarly, you can stream positions and stream markets as well. So streaming markets, you get different market updates, which again, can be important depending on the use case. So you might see that a market has been demolished, or as in a market has been closed, or what we would call settled at a given price at $0 or $1. All right, so that is the start here in terms of creating and streaming. What I also want to show is finding markets, the more advanced use case, kind of getting into the weeds on the Frontrunner API side. So when we look at the SDK, we split up the namespaces into Frontrunner and Injective. That's so that you as the developer can kind of know if you're interacting with Frontrunner, which is our public API. You need an API key. It's an authenticated public API, or the Injective API. And so, again, looking at the operations, the Frontrunner operations are focused on market discovery and getting enough information to correlate the Frontrunner market to, let's say, a market that you have from a sports data vendor, as well as getting the Injective market ID for actually submitting the orders. And the Injective operations are for understanding the order state, for streaming information, and so on, which we just kind of showed off in the demo there. So this find markets operation, which we showed, makes several API calls. It's kind of convenience function, like I mentioned. If we look at the other operations under the hood, we'll see the kind of full breadth of data that's available on Frontrunner at the moment. So one thing to note is we don't provide odds through our API at the moment. We're assuming that sports data as a separate integration is where market makers might be getting their odds. But that is something that we might look into in the future. So generally, markets are the core piece here, where you want to find a game to bet on. You'll be finding markets or filtering here by different IDs or by status, and I'll show these in the demo as well. Just going to jump around to the entities again. Reminder that this is generally the teams that are involved in the markets. The events are pretty simple. There'll be the game, for example, that is related to the given market. The reason why we have these different data types is we might have multiple markets for a given sporting event. We could also have multiple props for a given event. Maybe we'll have a player prop as well as the game winner prop for the NBA, for an NBA playoffs game, for example. So let's take a look at these in action. So we have another file here. I'm just going to close this stream, which just kind of goes through and hits the different Frontrunner endpoints or uses these different Frontrunner operations to show what we can do with the API. The most high-level data type would be our sports. This under the hood just gets the leagues and gets the set of sports that we support from the list of leagues. So I'll show this off as well, and then leagues is just listing the several leagues that we support. So let's just start with those two. So here we see the two responses. We have our sports, soccer, Formula One, and so on. And on the league side, we see the full league objects, which have the name, the sport, and the ID, which if we want to use that ID, which we will here, for filtering, that's a common search method for narrowing down your bot to, let's say you're only market making for one sport, you'd be using the league ID to filter down. So let's check out just a few of the sport events for basketball. So we have our leagues up here as before, but the basketball events, we have a created date, we have the event type, and importantly the name and the start time. So we know when this game starts, and we know who is playing against each other. And these are the known playoffs games that have Frontrunner markets at the moment. Now, if we were to switch it to baseball, we're going to get a bunch more because there are a lot more baseball games. And we see kind of the full list here, all the abbreviations and the event names and their start times. So this is how you could correlate the Frontrunner markets to markets from any other sports data vendor. Now let's take a look at the sport entities as well, just to kind of show that. So here's where you get the full names of the entities. We can see just there are all the different teams, just showing 5 for demonstration purposes here. But we have the abbreviations and the names. You can use these to filter markets and just generally kind of have the way of filtering down on the Frontrunner side that would match up with another sports data vendor as before. And finally, let's take a look at props. So we're just showing the first 5 basketball props. Here we see we have the winner for this sport event. Generally, we have some winner props for different games that are coming up. So there aren't too many because there aren't too many games. And the prop is kind of the question. What are you actually betting on? Who to win the game for a given event? So this kind of shows the data that we can get from the Frontrunner API as part of the SDK. And this is an important supplementary action alongside the Injective operations, which again wraps Frontrunner operations, Frontrunner use cases around the Injective SDK. So these two together really unlock a lot of potential to build on top of Frontrunner markets. And we'll be adding more functionality to the SDK as we see additional use cases or useful enhancements. So that was the demo of the code here. I do want to check out the docs a little bit more just to show how you can configure. We kind of started off just showing you configure the wallet using one of these environment variables. This you generally won't need to change. This is our production API endpoint. The API token can be set through this environment variable. So once you receive it from us, this is how you authenticate to the API. And then there's some more details under the hood if you're using testnet versus mainnet. Again, right now, Frontrunner's product is on testnet. By default, this is all configured to testnet. You don't need to worry about any of this at the moment. We run an Injective node. So this is a public node. The SDK will generally, by default, hit our node. You could also hit Injective's Kubernetes API by setting this environment variable to Injective. And we're not going to look at logging or the faucet in too much detail. But that's just a bit about the configuration. We also kind of go through some of the concepts that I mentioned in the demo as well, which I'm not going to go through here, but just to kind of show it. And these are our home versus away conventions and which entity is the long entity, which is the short, and so on. And finally, again, this is where all the operations can be found. As we add more, they'll get added here. Some of the, and we see them namespaced by Frontrunner and Injective. I think we covered most of these. You can fund a wallet separately from creating the wallet. Generally, we just create it and fund it all in one go. And that is most of the SDK. So bringing us back here. This use case of finding markets is critical for any sort of market-making bot on top of Frontrunner and Injective. So we've shown creating orders, we've shown canceling orders, the basic operations required for risk management. Of course, having an actual algorithm that manages the orders that are submitted is a whole separate important piece. And finding Frontrunner markets is another key piece that unlocks building on top of Frontrunner. What are the markets that are available? What are the order books? What do the order books look like? Streaming your orders and trades. These are all things that we can do with the Frontrunner SDK. And we're really excited for all of you to build on it. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the demo here.